Hello, Em. How are you doing? Emily Claire McFarlane. How are you doing tonight? Today or tonight is the 9th of September, 2018, and it is about 8:30 p.m. You might notice that I don't have a background here. My background sort of fell off. So I've got to take steps to fix it a little bit. Anyway, no background today, so the white wall will have to do. So I hope you had a good weekend. Today's Sunday, and I'm wrapping up a weekend. Yesterday was Saturday, and I went to a fundraising dinner, which I really enjoyed. The fundraising dinner it was called Loving Farm Animal Sanctuary. And that is a place where animals are rescued. It is an animal rescue sanctuary. And what that means is that they take animals that were raised for food, like sheep and goats and pigs and cows and chickens, and they try to find a home for them if if they're, say, too sick to be slaughtered, or their owner doesn't need them anymore. They find homes for these animals, and they also care for them. They'll give them medical attention, they'll feed them really well, give them a place to stay, indefinitely. And it's an animal sanctuary. And quite often, they're, they will be sanctuaries for dogs and cats and horses, all kinds of animals. We saw pigs and chickens and horses and goats and sheep there, and it was just a really nice place run by really heart-centered people who are kind to animals and who have a lot of compassion for the animals and for their suffering. And I had a really good time. There were about, I guess, 25 people there. And like I mentioned, it was a fundraising dinner. So they invited a vegan chef who was a YouTube personality, or is a YouTube personality. And they put together a wonderful dinner. There was also a vendor there who produced vegan cheeses, and we were able to sample some of her wares, some of the cheeses that she produces. One of them was this wonderful blue cheese. I haven't had blue cheese in a long, long time. And this particular blue cheese tasted a lot like blue cheese. And there was also nacho cheese. I mean, I hadn't had nacho cheese in a very long time. It was being heated up in this crock pot in the kitchen, and I was able to pour it over my potato rinds and some crackers that I had. Really outstanding. It was so good. This person makes cheeses out of, say, coconut oil and other things. Even potatoes. Apparently, you can make cheese out of potatoes. And if you put in the right spices, things taste a lot like cheese. Cheese, yeah. So that was really nice. Also, at the meal, we had dessert too. We had peanut butter and chocolate cups, like Reese's peanut butter cups, and they were fabulous, so fantastic, so delightfully good and rich, chocolatey and peanut buttery. I love the combination of chocolate and peanut butter. I love peanut butter all by itself and chocolate all by itself too, and they're really good together. Also, we had ice cream. I think there was a churro flavored ice cream. Yeah, churro. Those are those Mexican pastries that are long and have a lot of cinnamon and sugar on them. There was another ice cream. I think the flavor was like like a chocolate latte or a chocolate mocha. Anyway, they were pretty amazing. So I had a really wonderful dinner with a lot of delightful people who I hope to see again. There were a lot of people there from the vegan community in San Luis Obispo and Morro Bay and Atascadero, and it was really nice to touch base with them. This particular animal sanctuary is right outside of Paso Robles. And so it took a little bit of a drive for me to get there. You know, I live in Lompoc, so it took about an hour and a half for me to get there. But it was well worth it. Yeah, I was really able to connect with the people there and visit and had some great conversations. Someone brought a camera that they had just purchased, and we got to talk about taking photographs. I just bought a camera, the one that you're watching this video on. So it was a good time. You may notice I've got blue hair today. And you check that out. Yeah, I'm just experimenting. I didn't have blue hair all day today. I just had blue hair this evening because I wanted to give blue hair a test drive, right? The other time I had white hair and now this blue hair. And, I'm sort of experimenting a little bit with decorating the hair and what that would feel like and be like. And just getting comfortable with it and having fun with the whole process. Getting familiar with the hair color and, how it comes out and how much it stays in my hair and what it looks like when it's in it. So, let's get on with Peaceful Living, Mary Mackenzie's book. Daily Meditations for Living with Love, Healing, and Compassion. I could use some of that today. Let's see. Today is the 9th of September. So here we go. Never think you've seen the last of anything. Idura Weltley. Our actions impact others. Have you ever noticed that we all breathe the same air? Literally, each time we exhale, our breath goes out to the world. Where does it go? Your neighbor's house, Utah, China? Sooner or later, it probably makes its way to all those places. Similarly, each action we take has an effect on the world. Sometimes the way our actions affect others is obvious, but often, like our breath, they spread invisibly. If we don't see an impact, we easily forget that we have one. This is dangerous because in the forgetting, we lose touch with our role in creating peace in the world. Say that you've had a frustrating day and when you go home, you yell at your kids and kick your dog. Your kids learn from your behavior and your modeling, and when they feel frustrated, they yell at someone else. When people feel frustrated or angry, they may snap at the bank clerk or store cashier. Maybe those people will go home and snap at their children. We can affect people without knowing what we do. It is important to be aware of this and choose to act in ways that are in harmony with the results that we want. For today, consider how your actions with the people you encounter will ripple through the world. That's a really good admonition. An admonition is a warning. I think it is important to consider how we impact the world. Our actions truly do have a domino effect on subsequent actions. And, to some extent, we get to choose how we respond to others, how we respond to life's slings and arrows, how we respond to life's circumstances. I think it is easy to forget our impact on others. I think quite often we think of our impacts as being finite, that, we'll have an impact and any subsequent impact vanishes somehow. That's not the case. How we act about in response to others, has a knock-on effect. And that knock-on effect continues, considerably. It continues through time. And how I treat you and how I respect you, I'm sure will have a knock-on effect on how you treat others. And then how those others treat others further. So, there's a really heavy responsibility related to that, about, because how we act and react can affect not just one person, and not just 10, and not just 100 or 100,000, but maybe perhaps nearly all people on the planet. I can imagine reverberations of behavior, knock-on effects continuing like a domino. I can imagine that happening through cultures and societies all throughout the world. Media services, the internet. I can imagine behavior being transmitted through all those means, through video and audio. Yeah. It really is pretty awe-inspiring. Well, that's a pretty deep thought. Well, I want to mention that I had a really fantastic weekend. I did go to Paso Robles yesterday. And today I went to Santa Barbara and I went dancing at Dance Tribe. And I had a fantastic time dancing with my friends. Dancing is kind of like group play. You're kind of all there in the room, enjoying each other as you move around it, as you dance. There's a certain flowiness, coordination of the music and your body, and along with others. And, it's a lot of fun. Boom, boom, boom. I am committed to dancing on a regular basis. It's part of my life now. It's part of what I do. It's part of my makeup. It's part of my psychology. It's something I really thoroughly enjoy. And one of these days, I hope to take you dancing. I think it is a phenomenal skill to learn. It builds confidence. It builds power in your legs and body. It builds endurance. It helps with balance. I'm very good with balance. It helps with movement. It helps with recovering from falls. I feel a lot more graceful. If something gets in my way, say as I'm walking down the street, I'm able to avoid the obstacle pretty well because my body just uses dance moves to negotiate the obstacles. It's the very same thing I do on the dance floor. And after dance, I had a wonderful opportunity to visit with a group of people who are involved in the Nonviolent Communication Book Club down in Santa Barbara. Although the meeting place this time was in Montecito. And that was neat. One memorable thing that I picked up as I was driving through Montecito was the home that I was going to was very near where the mudslides happened in Santa Barbara, and I was able to see some of the destruction caused by the mudslide last year. Pretty phenomenal stuff. Yeah, I was really blown away about how a lot of that destruction still exists. That was large scale destruction. Anyway, enough of that. I had a really good time sort of going over NVC principles and thinking about personal growth and personal development with my friends. We had a few exercises where we did an empathy exchange, and we basically had conversations to encourage one another and to help each other look at their lives in different ways so that we can gain perspective. And, it's really valuable. That also is a valuable part of my life. As I've told you before, I'm really passionate about communication. And I'm passionate about gentle communication in particular. Now, what do I mean when I say gentle communication? Well, I mean communication without judgment, communication without coercion. Gentle communication also has a lot to do with negotiation and mediation techniques. And gentle communication, in my mind, falls into a few different main categories. For example, nonviolent communication would be an example of gentle communication. Also, motivational interviewing would also be an example of that. I tend to blend in a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy and client-centered therapy from Carl Rogers into that mix as well. And in addition, any kind of customer service type application, any kind of that also can be, I think, under the gentle communication category. What else is gentle communication? I mentioned them earlier, mediation and negotiation. Quite often that requires gentle communication to solve problems, get a point across, things like that. So I'm really an advocate of that kind of communication and developing communication skills such as active listening and accurate empathy. These are things that that I think are really important. By the way, I'm going to get a glass of water. I wonder if I can do that. Can I pause this a little bit? I don't know how to pause it. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I really needed that drink of water. I was getting thirsty and my throat was getting a little sore. Anyway, okay, ready for it. Okay, so what was I talking about? I can't remember. Oh well. So that means I'll go to my clipboard here and see what I've got to talk about. So here's an idea. Test and develop a new story by writing it down. Something that I've been intrigued by lately is writing down the thoughts in your head on paper so that you get a chance to critically think about those words and sort of understand them just on paper in an objective format instead of sort of piecing it together and trying to figure it out while the thought is in your mind. When a thought is in your mind, it's kind of slippery. It's hard to get your hands around it. It's hard to solve it. There's some parts of it that you forget. And so, quite often, what I've been doing lately is writing down a thought. Say, even a happy thought, a sad thought, a fearful thought. And then once it's written down, analyzing that thought, figuring out what it means, and maybe even writing a little story about that thought. Getting together like a complete narrative about that story, so that you can further analyze it, break it down, maybe figure out what its parts are, and think about subjects, think about how to deal with it. You know, what I say is that life is really about what you do. How do you address the negative thoughts when they show up? That's really what life is about. Do you sort of act out physically in response to that thought, or do you maybe you do nothing and you just sort of maybe perhaps dwell on the thought continually, let it mull over time in your mind, and maybe it's a combination of those two things. I think that whatever you choose, a careful analysis of that thought often makes sense. And, you can write it down. It becomes objective in some sense on paper. And you can take some time out to sort of analyze it and understand it. And, it also gives you a chance to sort of freeze frame your thought so that you can figure out a response to it. Maybe there's a better interpretation or a different interpretation that might be more helpful to you than this one. Maybe if you need to do some thought stopping, maybe you can decide, hey, you know what? I don't want to think about this thought anymore. You might just stop thinking about it and then focus from that point onward, focus on maybe just your external environment and focus on, say, things that you can do physically, maybe a task that it's at hand. Sometimes thoughts are not that valuable and you just need to sort of cut them short and then focus on something else. Yeah, if there's another thought that you want to focus on, stop that thought and then focus on an alternative. Maybe you're not sure what the alternative thought is. What you can do is use some distraction technique. Maybe you listen to music or watch television, or just do a chore or something that you've needed to do, or even surf the internet. Any kind of distraction might be helpful to get your mind off of a thought that's unhelpful or ineffective. So, in my own mind, what I've read about it is it's often called narrative therapy. Typically, this is where people, or when people, take their thoughts and write them down on paper. Sometimes they'll write them down on paper in a stream of consciousness format, where they will just, whether it makes sense or not, they'll just jump around from topic to topic as their mind thinks about new things, and just write down the stream of consciousness information as it appears, as in their mind, as fast as they can write it down. I happen to think that a lot of the feelings that we feel can be traced directly to the narrative. That is the story that we have about our external reality. And so I think it's really helpful to analyze it, usually for the purpose of changing it, making it better, more helpful, more accurate. Often, if you make a thought more accurate, it becomes less of a problem. It's those inaccurate thoughts which are a problem, what I often call sloppy thinking. Sloppy thinking can be things like black and white thinking. That is, maybe an external event is like this or like that. Quite often it's a blend of perspectives, or it's a blend of a blend of perspectives. And black and white thinking is usually quite limiting and restrictive. Another kind of thinking that's a little sloppy is what I'd call overgeneralization. Sometimes people make generalizations as a way to think about a subject, and that's great to an extent. But when you generalize, you also tend to lose detail, and when you lose detail, you lose some accuracy, and your thinking can go off the rails pretty fast. Stereotypes are a good example of overgeneralizing. And that's the kind of thinking that we want to steer clear of. Also exaggerated thoughts. Sometimes we have thoughts that are sort of accurately reflect reality, and other times those thoughts are, maybe we exaggerate them so that they're more intense, or these ideas are, say, bigger, more general than the situation. Exaggerated thoughts. Maybe we exaggerate something. Instead of making it big, we make it small, like we exaggerate its smallness of an idea. And that's usually not good at all. So, it's really important to exercise care that your thinking is as accurate as possible. And try to steer clear of sloppy thinking, because it can get you into trouble. And by that I mean it can cause a lot of unnecessary emotional pain. So anyway, on that note, for me, this is how I'm extending to you care. This is how I care for you. I care for your mental health. I care about your thinking process. I care about your future, and how a person thinks, how, what your narrative is. I think it's important to curate the narrative, to prune the narrative, and to make it just as accurate a representation of reality as possible. Because I think that will help you be a more critical thinker, a more reliable thinker, a more admired thinker among your peers. And hey, that sounds like an admirable goal, don't you think? So anyway, my time's coming to a close here. And, like usual, as I close, I just want to say how much I love you, and how much I'm interested in you being happy. May you be happy. May you be satisfied. May you be content in the world. I hope that you strive to be effective and optimistic and hopeful. And I hope that every subsequent day is a better day for you. That the days you have today are the worst of the days you can remember in the future. Yeah. So with that, and with a semi-fatigued brain, it's so late, I want to wish you a good night, and peace and love.